Just days after congestion pricing was put on pause, new data shows that subway delays are on the rise.
So now that the plan to fund improvement projects is on the back burner, will delayed trains continue to be part of our commute? Fox 5's Lisette Nunez takes a closer look.
So suddenly, after New York City pauses its controversial tax on cars, which was supposed to fund the subway itself immediately gets worse. Critics say the city is getting revenge on its populace for rejecting the license plate readers that would have taxed every car on the road, but proponents of this new driving tax say the subway's delays are proof we aren't paying enough taxes. But the one thing everyone here agrees on is that public transit in this city isn't going to get better anytime soon.
If you've noticed an increase in train delays in the last year, chances are you are not alone.
Subway trains might not be moving as quickly through the station because modernization projects may have to be deprioritized because of Governor Hochul's sudden decision to put the brakes on congestion pricing.
I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing risks too many unintended consequences.
85% of the people that come into the Central Business District every single day do it on buses and trains. These are the folks who need the investment.
Mayor Adams says the subway system is averaging about 6 felonies every day. He wants those statistics to improve.
This is video from inside a stalled F train taken by a Fox 5 colleague this morning.
It would have generated jobs, construction jobs. It would have been a boost to our economy. It would have improved transit service for our region.
But many expressed concerns that the program would put more people into the system without a plan to improve service first.
Just when the everyday working man thought he'd stuck it to the system by rejecting financial tyranny, the subway starts falling apart. Almost as if its sudden deterioration is completely on purpose. But even though this might look like retribution from progressive leaders upset that the sheeple of the city haven't gone along with their plans of world domination, what no one's willing to admit is that even if the city taxes every car on the road, none of that money's going to address the real reasons our subway is perpetually terrible, when it already costs billions of dollars a year to operate. Because billions in new revenue might pay for brand new subway cars and platforms, but fancy new stuff won't address New York's mental health crisis, which has led to its shelters becoming so full the homeless have nowhere to live but in the subway itself. And not only is the subway a shelter of last resort for New York's neglected poor, it's also a haven for criminals with assaults, robberies, and knife-related incidents going through the roof, leaving many to wonder how installing elevators and shiny new LED monitors to blast us with TV commercials while we wait for the trains is going to stop criminals from running rampant down here. And how exactly is it going to convince people to start paying for the train? Because the last time I checked, no one does that anymore. Which brings us to the real reason the subway system is perpetually terrible. All the money in the world won't fix a justice system that immediately releases criminals and fails to punish minor offenses. And all of the money the city was hoping to raise certainly isn't going to help the homeless rebuild their lives and get off the streets, since none of that money would ever have been meaningfully spent on mental health programs. And of course, everyone's aware of this. The governor's aware of this, which is why she put a stop to congestion pricing, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief. But behind the scenes, the wheels of wealth redistribution have been working quickly to push as hard as possible for the reactivation of New York City's car tax, which looks like it may happen at some point because all the infrastructure to tax your car isn't going away. On top of that, activists say that all of New York City's problems aren't because of crime or corruption. No, it's because the government here doesn't have enough of our money. And it's been revealed that they're coming to get it, one way or another. The wonderful New York City subway, full of life and vibrancy, and there's a screen right here blasting me in the face. It's not great down here. No, it's not. And that's what's got activists so riled up, because the taxes and fees that were meant to fix this place, those are no longer on the way because congestion pricing has been canceled. Actually, that's what we've been told. You wouldn't know by looking at this place, but it already costs $20 billion a year to operate. But alas, that's not enough money to make repairs or improvements, and we are likely to see these taxes again in the near future. How soon is anyone's guess? But before we get into when these taxes are going to hit, you've got to look at what the transit activists are so upset about.
85% of the people that come into the Central Business District every single day do it on buses and trains. These are the folks who need the investment.
If you want trains, if you want new stations, if you want signals from this century, think about that. We got to get this done.
So these protesters, they definitely have a good point. Now that the money's not coming as soon as they thought it was. Nothing down here is going to change anytime soon. But what exactly people were expecting to change, based on how expensive this is to operate already, is not something anyone can really agree on. Right now, our $20 billion gets us peeling paint, trash cans that look like they themselves need to be thrown away, cracked $1 million monitors, and elevators that never ever seem to be working correctly. If this is what $20 billion a year gets us, what's an extra $1 billion going to do? Because $1 billion is the amount of revenue that was projected based on the license plate readers, which are an unavoidable toll, and all of that money was going to come down here and go to the subway. But $1 billion only represents a 5% increase over what it already cost to operate this place. Yet we're supposed to believe that an extra 5% in the city's budget was going to change what you see here and make it a magical brand new place with trains that run on time and no crime and just this perfect utopia. Really? But the subway being a backwards, poorly run operation is only part of the problem. And what's even more fascinating than the belief that taxing cars was going to change what you see down here is the people that are advocating for all of this money don't expect it to come from the people who use the subway itself, which critics say makes this the perfect example of an attempt at wealth redistribution.
Standing outside her office, they urged the governor to keep a promise and not make what they called a generational mistake. They accused her of caving to political pressure.
I think it's very short-sighted of a lot of people.
So I get that people are angry with the governor. Some are saying that this is political because there are elections coming up. But the real problem is that this subway, it doesn't make enough money on its own to stand on its own 2 feet. And in the real world, businesses that don't make enough off their paying customers to stay open, they end up shutting down. And you know how the congestion tolls were supposed to generate $1 billion of extra revenue? Well, you know how they arrived at that number? It's only 30% higher than the $700 million the city loses from people who don't pay to use it. And what's crazy is nobody that wants congestion pricing and a better subway also wants people to pay to have to use the subway. Look at that, it's just so weird. It's like they want all of this stuff, but they don't want anybody to pay for it. In fact, these are the same people that usually advocate for the subway to be cheaper, which it can be. The city has ways to help riders who can't afford the full fare to get a half-price ticket. But right now, we're in a terminal that has a police station in it, and these gates are totally unguarded with people just jumping in. They are never going to crack down on fare evasion if this is the system that they just let operate. However, even though the subway itself is obviously a complete disaster, all of that infrastructure that's going to eventually tax cars, it still exists. It's not being torn down, and the governor herself said that this was just a pause. And anyone who grew up in the 80s or 90s with cassette tapes knows that pause and stop are not the same function. They do very different things. But the scuttlebutt floating around now is that there's a plan to reactivate these things sooner than anyone's expecting.
We need to support the governor.
Mayor Eric Adams throwing his full support behind Governor Kathy Hochul's decision to put a pause on congestion pricing.
We got to deal with congestion. We have to deal with environmental issues, but we should deliberate and make sure we get it right.
Adams says that the governor called him about 2 weeks before her announcement to discuss.
Well, would you look at that? The pause on congestion pricing has been premeditated. Everyone knew this was going to happen. Probably because it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you're going to tax everything on the street, that might be bad for the city's economy. And the reason it's so weird for the governor to say that the economy is the reason why we have to shut congestion pricing down is very strange, because she herself was at one point a big proponent of congestion pricing, and activists say that it will help the local economy because traffic makes people late, slows things down, and that we lose economic activity because we're stuck in traffic. But we're also stuck waiting for delayed subway lines, which cost $20 billion a year to operate. But the likely reason this is why it is now on pause is because the congestion taxes, they were never fairly targeted. For example, they're based on vehicle size, which sounds logical because a small car causes less congestion than a big truck. But the big truck is how your food gets to the grocery store. And that big truck, it was going to get charged 2 to 3 times the amount of money that the cars were going to be charged. And although cars, commuter traffic would only get hit once a day with the congestion fee, business traffic, like those trucks bringing food to the store, they were going to get hit every single time they drove into the congestion zone. And what do you think they're going to do with the costs that they have to pay? They're going to deliver those costs along with the oranges to Whole Foods, and now the oranges are going to cost more.
85% of the people that come into the central business district every single day do it on buses and trains.
Right, but we're not asking those people to pay for the subway to get better. Instead, we're asking for businesses and people who have trouble using the subway to pay for it to get better so that everyone who's down here now not paying for it can enjoy something nicer. And even though none of the benefits of congestion pricing are ever going to be had by actually having it in place, what's very strange is no one at this point is advocating for the tax to only apply to non-business traffic. After all, if 85% or whatever of people can take the subway, why aren't we taxing the guy in his Mercedes with his laptop? Why are we taxing the 5 people that are going to an apartment to renovate it and improve it? They can't take the subway, but the rich man can. But all of this squabbling over how to get their hands on our money has the city in a rather strange position because they still have bills to pay, yet they don't have the money to pay it. So now they're looking at creative ways to try and suck more money out of a system that wastes so much of it. And of course, the way they're going about this is extremely controversial because it's going to hurt the little guy that's trying to rely on the subway and trying to pay to use it. In fact, critics say this is what we're experiencing right now.
Trains might not be moving as quickly through the station because modernization projects like new signals that let trains go faster and closer together may have to be deprioritized because of Governor Hochul's sudden decision to put the brakes on congestion pricing. The new signal.
So already we're being told that the disaster that the subway is immediately turning into is because congestion pricing didn't happen when it was supposed to. But what nobody's talking about is that the renovations needed to fix up these trains and make them run better weren't going to immediately happen on day one either. And the system has so many problems and so many delays throughout it all the time that this is going to take years to fix. And the question many people are asking advocates of congestion pricing is, how do we know the subway wouldn't be functioning the exact same way it is today had this system been turned on a couple of weeks ago? Are we really to believe that the same day the system were to be activated, all of its problems would have magically disappeared? Are we supposed to believe it wouldn't look like this even while the cars are being taxed? And the city's also telling us that many of its improvements to accessibility are also going to be delayed because of congestion pricing. But in order to understand why that too is probably not the whole story, we've got to look at the main reason for train delays. Because the issue of train delays is going to expose how pretty much everything that's wrong with the subway has nothing to do with congestion pricing. And look at this, while they tell us that train delays might be the fault of congestion pricing, the MTA's own website says they've been trying to upgrade their signals for over 10 years, 2009. That's absolutely ridiculous. And how are we supposed to believe those delays would go away if the MTA's budget increased by 5% because of congestion pricing? Something about all this does not add up.
Now the head of the MTA said that various experts will look at just what the MTA can afford to do now that its capital program has been shredded by Hochul's decision.
Bottom line, this phase of the MTA's work is a huge challenge. It may feel right now like things are a little crazy and even that there's a crisis.
So look, obviously the head of the MTA very disappointed that congestion pricing didn't happen, but how come we're now being told that all of the stuff that the MTA promised to do, it's no longer able to keep doing? Making it seem like just as the governor was being accused of being political, so is everyone else. This whole thing is being political. We're being told the subway is terrible because we didn't let our taxes go up. And the reality in front of us is that all of the subway's problems will no longer be blamed on mismanagement or corruption. Oh no, they're going to be blamed on the people of New York who decided not to go along with the plans of our leaders.
What are the biggest concerns, do you think?
Well, Christine, for riders is going to be what projects will be put on hold. The initial focus on the need to cut back the program to make stations accessible and stopping the purchase of electric buses will be highly unpopular. There remains to be...
Yeah, so there's no way activists are going to be happy about this. How on earth could they go about repairing the subway by canceling things like electric buses? Absolutely no one in favor of congestion pricing wants to see something like that happen. Yet when you look at how electric vehicles are already failing across the country en masse, the idea of rolling them out in New York seems like a bad one. And the city's probably going to save billions by relying on old school technology that just works when you press the start button. Or in the case of an old bus that runs on gas and still just works when you turn the actual key. But New York City doesn't get all of its energy from renewable sources, and it's hard to argue that the environment would be better off if we had a fleet of electric buses rolling around charging on fossil fuel plants just like the subway. But on the other hand, the city's decided to stop stop doing many of the things that would actually increase the subway's usability. And not only is this going to make things harder for people that just want to use it and go about their day, making the subway less accessible by refusing to fix broken parts of it like these escalators or refusing to install elevators just is going to make it harder for people to adapt to congestion pricing when it eventually happens. Because public transit in New York is something all of us are going to have to get used to, even if its current state makes it impossible for some of us to access.
The elevated platform here on 46th Street is 5 flights up. The 61st Street escalator is broken, so the closest elevator is Queensboro Plaza. Both 36th and 46th Street stations were due to get elevators. It would have cost $17 million in congestion pricing derived funds. The council member has called the governor's...
So the idea of elevators for the subway, obviously it's not new. I mean, look at this thing behind me right here. They've been building these things into the subway for decades now. But as we just heard, elevators may not be coming to many stations because it would cost millions of dollars. And critics are waiting for someone to come along and convince them that even if we were to spend millions of dollars renovating the subway with all this congestion money, that it wouldn't turn out to look just like the inside of that elevator because it would be neglected, it wouldn't be taken care of, and the people down there don't respect it because they don't pay for it. Now, would accessible methods of entering the subway help it? Absolutely, yes they would. I've got 2 little kids, we can't really go anywhere without a stroller, but the problem is I'm not sure I would necessarily want them in the subway, even if there were working elevators. Again, the elevators are absolutely disgusting, and the subway itself, it's not safe. In fact, crime is so bad in the subway, the National Guard is still down there at various times of the day policing it along with the police, who now do random bag checks. It's essentially a military occupation zone at this point, and throughout the system you'll see armed guards with fully automatic weapons, and deep down, even though nobody in leadership wants to admit it, throwing billions of dollars into a black hole of a subway system isn't gonna get anybody the results they want. It's gonna take money from people shopping at the grocery store, and we're still gonna have exactly what we have today. And as someone who doesn't drive, at first, when I heard about congestion pricing, I was all on board. I said, this is gonna be great. We're gonna take money from the cars, and we're gonna improve the subway. But once I started looking into exactly how much money is spent on the subway that we already have, personally, that made me feel like they're just gonna waste the extra money that they get, and all of those promises that they're making, they're gonna be broken, just like the broken elevators and broken escalators that they said they're gonna spend all this money to install and did cost millions of dollars to install, but now don't even work because we're not maintaining them at all. And in my personal humble opinion, which I almost never give when I make these videos, there's only 2 things we need. Keep me from getting jumped when I'm down there trying to get to work, and make the trains run on time. Is that really so hard? 2 things, that's it. Do that, and then we'll talk about throwing extra money at a system that doesn't work for anybody. What do you think? Is that true? Is that your opinion? Do you have another opinion? Am I wrong about congestion pricing? Should I go back to believing that it's the right way to go? Let me know. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.